Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengauzen. Today is October 9th, and there are a lot of interesting news stories. One of Russia's key factories has come under attack. So where are the Flamingo missiles really? And hundreds of Tomahawks could be transferred to Ukraine, and experts have found where to get launches for them. Zelensky answered journalists' questions. There are some very interesting points there, and as usual, new threats to the whole world from Russia. Trump didn't congratulate Putin and called him names. Is the love gone, or is it just a temporary crisis? And also about how ChatGPT 5 might drive us all crazy. All this and more in today's episode. It's going to be a very packed episode, so if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. So on the night of October 9th, drones attacked Lukoil a gas processing plant in the city of Kotovo, Volgograd region. As a result, fires broke out on the premises. NASA satellite images show several heat signatures there, meaning fires broke out in multiple locations. Meanwhile, local residents report that they heard many explosions. Naturally, the local prominent governor promptly came out and stated that, in actual fact, as a direct result of some falling debris, a small fire unfortunately started, but it is truly not serious at all, and we will extinguish it very quickly. Let me remind you, this Korobkovsky gas processing plant is the largest gas processing facility in the Southern Federal District. Its production capacity is 450 million cubic meters of gas feedstock per year. It's a giant, practically a city in itself. And yet another significant plant has unfortunately encountered Ukrainian drones. Oh dear, and that's certainly not all. The crucial Yefimovka linear production dispatch station was also directly attacked by our drones, and this vital station meticulously services several main pipelines specifically designed for transporting essential petroleum products. Its throughput capacity is 50 million tons per year. So today both the gas processing plant and this station were hit. Well, naturally, of course, the drones themselves never hit anything. It's all just debris. This is a powerful artifact. I've mentioned this piece of debris many times already. And Vladimir Zelensky spoke with journalists. There are some interesting points. The supply of American long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine could become a factor that forces Russia to come to the negotiating table. There's a nuance here. Probably not the deliveries themselves, but deliveries in the necessary quantity. And then the effect that these missiles, which will target important sites on the territory of the Russian Federation, the effect itself might actually force them. Although, let me emphasize once again, this is probably the 10th time I'm talking about this phenomenon, the Maduro syndrome or the Maduro factor, meaning when a dictator sees that there's a blackout, there's no water, no electricity, and the people are basically eating roots and birch bark, and he still decides to leave everything as it is. Hyperinflation, but on the other side of the scale is the loss of power. He'll run the whole country into the ground, but he'll keep his power. That's exactly what Maduro did in his time, which is why it's called that. So yes, it's a good story, but recently some information came out. What was it? The Netherlands are buying 175 Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine. And I decided to check and double-check this information. You know me. Nitpicker isn't just my middle name. If these were gangsters, like in the old movies, the hunchbacks and all that. But now it's the nitpicker. So the information came out that the Netherlands are buying 175 missiles and might transfer them to Ukraine. But the only mention of the US decision to sell Tomahawks to the Netherlands appeared back on April 25th of this year. That is, at a time when no one in Ukraine was even talking about Tomahawk missile deliveries. So probably someone just saw the headline somewhere and thought, aha, the Netherlands are buying them, so now they'll be handed over to us. Could the Netherlands transfer these missiles to us? It's doubtful, because the Netherlands are buying them to install on frigates and submarines. Whereas, as we all understand, our option is the Typhoon ground-based launcher, of which there are only 2 in the entire world. Or more precisely, there are 4 of these launchers, plus a command vehicle and a reloading vehicle. Both of these systems are located in the US, but of course no one is going to give us any submarines or frigates. Theoretically, the Netherlands could transfer one along with one of their frigates, but naturally that would require permission from the United States, and that's Honestly, I think that's just unrealistic. But there is another solution. I recently saw it in my feed from the military expert Nikolai Belyeskov. So if there is a political decision from the US, then they will be able to find many more launchers than just two. So in 2000, Nikolai writes, in 2022 to 2025, the US decommissioned as many as 15 Ticonderoga class cruisers, each of which has 122 cells of the Universal Mk-41 vertical launch system. Each one has 122 cells. Therefore, if there is a fundamental decision from the White House administration, and of course from Donald Trump, then taking these launchers and mounting them on a chassis, yes, it's a matter of time, but it's a solvable issue. So if such a fundamental decision is made. Also from Vladimir Zelensky's interview, if Trump can secure a ceasefire, Ukraine will nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump, yes? Well, that's not even a question. Honestly, if he can secure a ceasefire, I'll be the first to raise my hand. Seriously, no jokes right now. By the way, it's worth noting that nominations are submitted starting in September, so they're already being submitted, and at the beginning of October, right about now actually, the decision might even have already been made. So usually the decision is made in the first week of October, which means it's unlikely for this year, but maybe next year. Well, it's necessary for Donald Trump to be nominated, although in principle he can be nominated by other countries or by members of their parliaments. Donald Trump would have nominated himself, but self-nomination is prohibited, which is why there are more than 300 nominees on the Peace Prize website, both individuals and organizations. I read through it, and there are some people there you've never even heard of. Every year they receive it. There have even been such cases in the last 10 years. And there's one more important point. Russia had planned to take Pokrovsk, but the counteroffensive by the Ukrainian armed forces disrupted those plans. Not only did they disrupt them, I want to tell you, but they also destroyed and captured a large number of occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction. By the way, friends, I'm glad that we managed to complete the fundraising for those units that are fighting precisely in the Pokrovsk direction. So there's even a part of your contribution in the fact that the Russians were stopped and given a musical beating, and some of them, there are now a little less alive. For that, a huge thank you to all of you. 26 countries of the European Union support Ukraine's accession, with only Hungary opposed. We knew who would be against it. We already know Orban, the Danube slug, inside and out. Sometimes it seems to me that doing something nasty to Ukraine is more important to Orban than doing something good for his own country. It's like that's just his top priority. He organized an entire referendum in his country, stirred up the situation, plastered billboards and ran ads. All just so that Hungarians would vote against Ukraine ever being accepted into the European Union. That's how much he doesn't want it. By the way, let's do this. Forget that I was just talking about Orban. Here's a riddle. Constantly criticizing Europe, Brussels, saying that NATO is provoking Putin, would do anything for Russian oil, blocks anti-Russian sanctions, rushes to bow to Putin at the first call, and does everything possible to hinder aid to Ukraine. This could be about Orban or maybe even the Russian propagandist Solovyov, probably. See how it turns out? If you hadn't said it was Orban, you could easily think it was someone from Russia. Well, the specific targets of Ust-Luga and Primorsk have been officially announced, which are indeed some of Russia's absolutely key and strategically important ports. So as they say, stay tuned. That's where Koshai's death is hidden. And a bit later I'll tell you where the Flamingo missiles are and where they've already landed. Most importantly, Russians will probably be shocked by the power of these missiles. And Ukraine is ready. Another point, Ukraine is ready for attacks on gas infrastructure. There is Plan A, our own gas, and Plan B, imports. This is an important statement because the Russians are trying to intimidate us. They're targeting Ukraine's gas extraction industry, knocking out its capacities. The main question now is to replace everything in time, find the funds for it. In other words, to import the necessary amount. Well, right now there's enough stored, just a little more is needed. But is Russia ready for attacks on its own energy and oil and gas infrastructure? I've just come across an excellent piece of material. Now, about the missiles. Where are the Flamingo missiles, but everything is connected? Then about whether Russia is ready or not for attacks, and whether it is prepared to plunge into darkness, and how long it can remain in that darkness. Well, in a figurative sense, it has long since plunged into darkness when Putin took over. But now about the missiles. Foreign media, particularly Bild, report that during the attack on the FSB base near Armyansk in occupied Crimea, 3 Flamingo cruise missiles were used there. And this attack took place on August 30th, and a day later, remember those shots when they showed the launch, our side already showed the launch of these Flamingo missiles. As a result of the attack, the main building of the outpost was destroyed, and OSINT specialists, based on the images and all the available information, determined that 2 missiles hit the target. Possibly 1 was shot down, but 2 made it to the target. And they write that at first glance, this seems like a very good result. But attention, friends. After the Flamingo missile strike, a crater about 15 meters in diameter remained. In other words, the Russians were stunned by the power of these missiles. Moreover, they were hitting targets where patrol boats were also located nearby. On an air cushion, 6 patrol boats were damaged at once, and one of the boats, which are quite large, was thrown hundreds of meters away just by the shock wave. So the Flamingo exists and it flies. Let me remind you, its range is over 3,000 kilometers. These missiles have entered mass production. As for why they don't fly every day, we'll talk about that a bit later as well. Friends, let me remind you, we're currently raising important funds for the 101st Brigade. For the Termit ground-based robotic systems, these are unmanned evacuation vehicles. They pick up a wounded soldier, quickly transport him to a safe distance, and then medics take over from there. So, ground-based evacuation vehicles are a crucial development on the front lines right now. Unmanned, I want to emphasize, because often those who go out to retrieve a wounded soldier become targets themselves. Everything is buzzing with drones and so on. That's why our soldiers are asking for these. Plus, these systems are multifunctional. They can evacuate the wounded, deliver supplies, and more. In other words, they're extremely useful for the 101st Brigade. By the way, our soldiers have recorded a video message directly to us. Please take a look.
We, the soldiers of the 101st Security Brigade, are reaching out to Boris Tizengauzen and his followers for help. We are very grateful to you for the drones you have previously provided. At present, we are in urgent need of 2 Termit ground robotic systems for the rapid and timely evacuation of wounded soldiers from the battlefield, which, in the current situation, will help save their lives. Our units are fighting in the Kostiantynivka direction and in Chasiv Yar. We continue to destroy the enemy and believe in
In this case, your donation can directly save a life. And let me remind you, there is no such thing as a small donation. So, to everyone who can help, I ask you to join in. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Monobank, PrivatBank, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. I see everyone, and to each and every one of you, I say a huge thank you for supporting Ukraine and our defenders. And if you don't see it, the QR code in the description leads there as well. It also goes to the fundraiser. And now, about Russia's own readiness for strikes on its infrastructure. Military analyst at the Royal Danish Defence College, Anders Nielsen, wrote an extensive piece on how the balance between Ukraine and Russia has changed and how this balance could be affected by the new long-range capabilities that Ukraine has acquired. And yes, he wrote this piece and structured it very well. So what has been happening? Ukraine understands that in order to end the war on favorable terms, or to put pressure on Russia in some way, it needs its own forces capable of striking Russian rear positions. Well, because sometimes they'll give us satellite data, sometimes they won't. They won't give us intelligence, they won't give us missiles, and so on and so forth, or they'll give us just 5 of them. In short, several domestic programs are being launched at once, and by the summer of this year it becomes clear that Ukraine has acquired, it's not yet known how many, but they have appeared, these means that can strike quite far and quite powerfully, as we've heard. This is well illustrated by the example of the Flamingo missiles, and it was announced that 50 units of these missiles will be produced per month. And by the end of the year, or the beginning of the next, up to 200 units per month. So the question arises, where are they? So the expert concludes that Ukraine is producing and stockpiling them because, for example, to take out the energy infrastructure of the Belgorod or Kursk regions, you need more than just 1 or 10 missiles. Or to deliver some other serious retaliatory strike. In response to the ongoing Russian strikes on our energy facilities, a certain quantity, a certain reserve is needed. Ukraine has shown that these missiles exist, they fly, and they are capable of seriously hitting targets. Therefore, the next time Russia delivers a powerful strike on the energy sector, it risks receiving a response. That is, if there is enough reserve, then it is at risk. And the situation where Ukraine demonstrated that it would respond in kind happened just recently. I think you remember the strike on the Belgorod power plant in response to Russian attacks on our energy sector. They shut down Belgorod. For now, it was temporary, but if necessary, it could last longer. In general, now, when the Russians plan their strikes on our energy sector or gas extraction industry, they already have a 15-meter crater on their own territory. And they keep in mind that Ukraine still has a certain stockpile of missiles. That's why Zelensky has recently been saying that we will create a blackout in Moscow, we will shut down the Belgorod and Kursk regions in response to Russian strikes. But this strategy of responding in kind, mirroring the fascist thugs with Putin, might not work exactly as intended. It's just street-level thuggery. And it's all about testing our resolve, daring us. No one has ever threatened Russia from a position of strength and so on. In other words, Putin hopes to continue striking our energy infrastructure and break the will of Ukrainians to win. He's ridiculous. How many times now? At first he thought he'd be greeted here with flowers, and now he thinks that strikes on our energy sector will break us. For some reason, we've already been through all of this. But here's what's important. But the Russians haven't gone through this yet, so look at the situation. The front line is at a standstill. The Russians keep striking our energy and infrastructure facilities just as they did before. For the Russians, the picture in Ukraine isn't changing, but in response, entire cities of theirs are starting to plunge into darkness. So, you see, there are no successes at the front, but now things have gotten even worse in the rear, inside Russia itself. And this is a very interesting situation. The logic here is actually quite simple. I think for now, I don't know how the Russian population will react to power outages, but they will definitely start to complain. We didn't sign up for this, we thought the war was over there, and why it has come here, no one knows. And just imagine if this really happens in Moscow. Just imagine a Flamingo missile hits an oil refinery. In that case, it's not even about repairing the facility. There simply won't be anything left of the processing plant. So yes, the serious question is, if there is a significant drop for the Russians, will Putin really sit down at the negotiating table? Interesting. Nevertheless, it would be truly ironic if the Russians, who are trying to break our will with strikes on our energy sector, end up breaking themselves as a result of similar mirrored retaliatory strikes. And you've probably already heard that Donald Trump did not congratulate Putin on his birthday. Let me remind you, back in 2018, he not only congratulated him, his advisors told him not to, but he did it anyway. But now, as you can see, he didn't congratulate him. And all this is happening against the backdrop of statements that Trump is once again disappointed in Putin. This is already the 8th time they've counted. And I think the most offensive thing for Putin is that he was called a paper tiger, specifically him, you understand? And publicly, at that. Well, and all Putin could say in response was to unleash his battle chipmunk Medvedev, who, in his usual manner, came out with something like, "Talk all year if you want, you're still a hippo. Talk your whole life, I'm still a man." Well, basically, yeah. Well, you might think, so he didn't congratulate him, big deal, just some trivialities, but no. This symbolism plays an extremely important role right now. That is, the flame has gone out, the bonfire of love has died, the passion fruit has withered. In other words, how do you restore that trust now? I mean, look at Putin. He tried what he could. He tried with Alaska, but that didn't work out for him. Then Ryabkov came out and said the momentum was gone, so now Trump has only one option left, to wait until Putin is the first to crawl to him and say, all right, let's start some negotiations again. But Putin won't do that. The second option is to quietly keep supplying weapons to Ukraine and watch as Russia sinks into darkness. And then there's the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, flying to the US. As we know, he's an excellent golfer, and he also knows very well when it's time to lose a little. That's why I think he's found the right approach to Donald Trump, at least. And after these meetings, it's as if Donald Trump wakes up and starts saying the right things. And then Peskov comes out and says that the dialogue between Russia and the US has been put on a serious pause. And now we've got some new problems coming our way. Listen, I use ChatGPT. Now, this is going to be a bit of a digression just to break up all the heavy political stuff. I use ChatGPT, and I'm really satisfied with it. There's a lot it absolutely does. It truly saves a significant amount of time. In other words, if you genuinely know how to effectively utilize it, it's absolutely fantastic. But now there's some rather interesting news. Actually, it's certainly not the very first time I've personally encountered this particular kind of story, where people are slowly but surely starting to genuinely lose their composure a little bit after extensively interacting with the advanced AI, ChatGPT. So there have been a few cases where ChatGPT starts convincing someone that they're the Messiah. To someone else, it tells them they're a superhuman, and people start experiencing serious disturbances. In reality, it doesn't actually convince anyone of anything. It's ChatGPT. It just creates the illusion that you're talking to a real person. It's actually a gigantic algorithm. But if you tell it, call me this, or write to me like this sometimes, it will do that. So you get the illusion that it's learning from you. I keep teaching it, and it comes up with some cool stuff. In my style, because it's learning everything from me. And in this case, it's the same thing. If a person thinks they're a messiah or a superman, they start sharing this with the chat, and often people give it names. They say so. If you tell ChatGPT that you are, I don't know, a man, 40 years old, and so on, that's exactly how it will act. Or, call me Superman. It will call you that, and everything will revolve around it. But people genuinely believe that ChatGPT has recognized their mission, acknowledged them as a Superman, and some even start discussing conspiracy theories with it, and it pulls information from everywhere if needed. And it says, yes, there are such things, such rumors have come out. In other words, it adapts to you. If you believe, it will believe too. So that's how it is. And then there are also cases of group delusion among people who communicated with each other online. For the first time in India, cases were registered of 3 young people were playing online games all the time, and after a while they started experiencing some paranoid urges. That is, it seemed to them that someone was organizing surveillance on them using artificial intelligence. So we are now entering a place where even the COVID-19 pandemic might seem like a mere children's fairy tale to us all. But that's just me expressing my personal thoughts and opinions, just to playfully distract you a little bit. So you absolutely shouldn't trust it if an advanced AI like ChatG5 tells you that you are, in fact, a superhuman being. You really shouldn't do that at all. Well, as for group delusions, the first case, 3 people, just look at Russia. Here's a case of group delusion, mass psychosis. There, everything happens through the television. It's just that brain damage has occurred. Russia has doubled the discounts on oil for India. In the coming months, Indian refineries will increase their purchases of Russian oil because they'll be getting even bigger discounts. Russia, I wonder, when will they start giving it away at cost price? Russians, can you imagine just how effective the business model built by Putin is? He's giving away oil for next to nothing right now. India is refining this oil for him, and China as well, and then sells you back gasoline with a higher markup, even though in Russia you have everything needed for the country to be prosperous. If only you could kick that bald jellyfish out of the palace, everything would be different. You just need to put someone sane in charge. Medvedev was different. Now he posts his threats on the national messenger Max against the backdrop of rumors about sending additional North Korean soldiers. Medvedev arrived in Pyongyang for the war. He stated that he came for the 80th anniversary celebration of the Workers' Party of Korea. I saw those photos. Medvedev is walking around in a costume like Dr. Evil from a children's store. He's walking straight ahead. His bravado is puffed up. Next to him is some North Korean official, and they are met by an honor guard who are the same height as them. Right in their caps, but the same height. What is this? Seriously? Is this like, do they have a special honor guard? A dwarf honor guard? What is going on? I saw at the parade there, you know. They specifically pick really tall ones. But here, who did you even get? Did you put makeup on kids or something from a kindergarten? Well, that's funny. You know, they always film Putin from above, so you can't see the difference between him and most people. Why are you so self-conscious? That's your height, mine is like this, yours is like that. All these insecurities, they say a lot about many things too. Special filming. Have you seen maybe when someone asks Putin something, they film him from above, and the people in front don't block the view, so the journalists kneel down. Well, how do they stand? Is there even such a thing as a Russian journalist? I don't know. So, well, Medvedev actually wrote that in this particular instance. Max wrote, "Friends stick together while enemies tend to get quite tense." You know, sometimes Medvedev reminds me of someone. Like that teenager who got infected with the AUE movement, the criminal code and so on. You know, little kids walk around these runts with pencil cases and say, "Do you even know how to enter a cell? For the brotherhood and the neighborhood, I shoot point blank." Brother for brother, that's the foundation. Left hand's a crown, right hand's a funeral. Medvedev reminds me of a little wannabe thief, but in his case, the left one's for the glass, the right one's for the Rastaman. Friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Demonic calm. Everyone needs it. You're sad and lonely. You can't fall asleep a couple minutes of Tizengauzen at night. That's it, you sleep like a dream. But that's not all. And then Solovyov popped up. This jerk started condemning the possible delivery of missiles and said that Tomahawks are strategic weapons, that they could carry nuclear warheads, and that launching a Tomahawk would already activate Russia's nuclear storage system, meaning the nuclear doctrine would kick in, and then it would be the end of humanity, everyone would die. But he kept repeating that phrase, that Russians will go to heaven and everyone else will die like dogs. And why would there be a world in which there is no Russia? Well, of course, no one is actually going to use any nuclear doctrine, but this already looks like desperation. Because right now, Solovyov is actually doing a bad job for Putin from a propaganda standpoint. He creates the illusion that after the use, at least theoretically, after the use of a Tomahawk, Russia will wipe everyone out in nuclear ash. But I guarantee you, whether one Tomahawk hits or 10 Tomahawks, just like they talked about ATACMS, about Storm Shadow, the scalps, which... that's it, now it's nuclear ash. So what happens next? Because Russia, do you know why they won't use it? Russia has already gone through all the points of its nuclear doctrine, or rather, Ukraine has gone through all of them and Russia has done nothing. There were several times when Russia should have used nuclear weapons according to their own doctrine. Receipt of information about the launch of ballistic missiles targeting Russia. Did that happen? It did. Ballistic missiles were flying. A strike on critically important facilities in Russia that would disrupt the actions of the nuclear forces. A strike on the nuclear triad. These are the points at which Russia is supposed to use nuclear weapons. A strike on the nuclear triad. Famous, it will go down in textbooks. Operation Web. When they burned strategic aviation, and before that, they also struck the over-the-horizon radar. Aggression against Russia using conventional forces that threatens the existence of the state. And territorial integrity too. It happened. They entered the Kursk region. They did. And now a new point. At this rate, Putin should be pressing that button every day. A fifth point has appeared. Remember, they also rewrote that nuclear doctrine. Now we'll rewrite it again. Receipt of reliable information about a mass launch or flight of aircraft, cruise missiles, unmanned or hypersonic aerial vehicles, and their crossing of the border with the Russian Federation. About a mass launch. Did it happen? It did. Several hundred have already flown over there to them, and more will keep coming. Even more will be coming. So do you know why Putin hates Ukraine and Ukrainians so much? Because Ukraine is showing the whole world that he's a coward. Pardon my French. Friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and subscribe to this channel. And I kindly ask you, let's support the fundraiser for the 101st Brigade. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. They need our help right now. If you can, let's support them. Wishing us all a peaceful day and glory to Ukraine.